就是 The only thing is be aware that if you're taking big pictures of the flag this way, the construction is dropping partially in the landscape.
Right. That's right, exactly.
Yes, I can. Not in this.
No, I mean here.
9. Yeah, I see it up there.
That in itself was a historic event. We have never found our way that well. you all here today for this unique and historic moment in Ocean County history. I ask that the Ocean County Sheriff's Department Color Guard post the color.
And look. Carry flags.
Please stand.
Rock time. Ha. Forward. Ha. Left. 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 Walk time. Ha. Detail. Ha. Left. Pace.
Before we join in the Pledge of Allegiance, I would point out to you there are two American flags in the courtroom. The one to my right representing our current American flag, and the one that some of you may be able to still see. The flag in the back is the flag containing 31 stars, which is the number of stars that existed on the first day that this courtroom was opened in September of 1851. I now ask that you join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Color Guard, please retire the colors.
On guard, half step to the rear, march. Walk time, march. Left, left, left. Forward, march. Left, 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 left. Carry flags. Two. Left, 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 left. Awesome. Ah. Detail. Oh.
Please be seated. During my 20 years as assignment judge, I've been privileged to work with a great group of freeholders who have made Ocean County the fine place that it is. It is my honor now to introduce one of them who has worked tirelessly in that capacity for many years, and among other things, has been a staunch advocate of preservation of our county's heritage. I would welcome to the podium Freeholder John Steepway.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct honor and pleasure as the senior member of the Ocean County Board of Chosen Freeholders and getting near the age of this building, as the senior member of the board, to welcome everyone here today at this grand and auspicious occasion for Ocean County. You should see the money we saved in doing this project. You know, I was thinking the other day that when this courthouse was built in 1850 and 1851, that it was the most substantial structure in the county of Ocean. It seems to me that self-government is just that. That we, the people, in building our governmental institutions, have every right and even duty to build them in such a way that looks to the future, that says, we are here, and this we believe in. This courtroom wasn't finished in this style for quite a while. I'm sure the county of Ocean of 1850 couldn't afford to do that. In the 1870s, as the county grew, it was built in much the way you see it today. It had a long history. It had a lot of hard use. It had a great fire. And the courtroom we remember before this was really a product of that fire. The judge, Judge Serpentelli, for many years has wanted to restore this room to this. And really the county wasn't in a position to do that until our tax base started to grow. But when it did, we revisited this project, the Board of Freeholders, and decided now was the time. And again, I think this is in the tradition of Ocean County. We built it when we could afford it, and we built it right. Again, this building was the most substantial building in the county when the county was formed. We continue that tradition today. The Board of Chosen Freeholders is most proud of this courthouse complex, is most proud of this facility, and Judge Serpentelli, we are most proud of this accomplishment in this courtroom. Because without your vision, without your pushing, without your good humor and good nature, it never would have come about. Again, my great pleasure to welcome you here today to these historic festivities for this great courtroom. Thank you.
And now, my pleasure to introduce another icon of Ocean County history. When we first started on this grand journey of trying to bring this courtroom back to the way it originally was, I knew that the first person I had to speak to was the great historian of Ocean County, Polly Miller. And Polly threw open her arms, threw open her office, and gave us the incentive, the basic information to go forward and to do the additional research that was necessary to bring the courtroom to where it is today. And it's my great privilege to introduce to you now Pauline S. Miller.
Well, it's a real pleasure for me to come into this room today and see it for the first time at finished room. I don't know how long ago it was, probably about 4 years ago, I guess. Judge Serpentelli called me one day, and he said, "Polly, will you come over here?" He said, "I'm looking at something and I need your advice about this, about that." So I came over, and as we came through his chamber doors, we stopped there in front of that big door there, and it was stripped, partly stripped, of white paint, all that sort of thing. And the judge was quite concerned about the fact that the 1870 fire in the courthouse had damaged some of the upper part of the columns there and left burned, strange things. And we was trying to figure out, oh, we're going to have to tear it down, we're going to have to cut it off. I don't know how many things he thought we had to do to it. I'm a historic preservationist, so I don't believe in tearing down anything. That's possible. But even if it leaves scars, it still tells us something about the 1870 fire that was here. But the thing that interested me most about this was the column had been stripped of paint and other color and all that sort of thing. And it was a beautiful piece of wood. I think it was fir, I don't remember it, but it was a beautiful piece. You just put your hand on it like a cat's back. And I found out that came from a trend from the double trouble sawmill. Now that really makes it local. And that, when I think about that, I thought, well, I didn't buy, this is not the only piece of lumber that came from double trouble, but it was certainly one of the major pieces. And that's what I like to attach to historic places, something that you can go back and make a connection with part of the history of the area. So when I came in today, I haven't been, since I retired 2 years ago, I really haven't been over here. So all of this is although I went through a lot of the planning on all of this, I'm just enjoying and feasting on the details that we talked about, and of course the judge has taken care of. But I just want to give you that one example of how we care about what we have, how we care about preserving it so that people 150 years from now can see the history of Ocean County all right here. Now I'm giving you a little bit of a secret. The secret is that Judge Serpentelli really is a passionate historic preservationist. I'm thinking of myself a judge, but he really is a very caring, very about every detail, and it should be preserved. And I think that we have him to thank for holding this whole thing together with all the people he had to work with and put up with and all that sort of thing. And I'm delighted that I was one of those persons that he called upon to jaw about every little detail. So that's the judge's secret that I'm letting out. He's a historic preservationist, and I think that we all should give him applause for the wonderful job he's done.
For those of you who don't know, Polly has a book that's about that fact on the history of Ocean County. You won't read it in one bedtime sitting, but it's an absolutely marvelous book, and it reaches out to all of the county, not just Toms River. And I would really recommend it to your reading. It's, I assume, available at the Ocean County Museum and other places as well, maybe even on Amazon. But there is no one in the county who possibly knows us like she does. It is next my distinct honor to introduce Associate Justice Janie Levecchia of the New Jersey Supreme Court. After graduation from Rutgers North Law School, Justice Levecchia served in various capacities in public service. Most of her life has been devoted to public service, starting as a Deputy Attorney General in the Division of Law, and later, after a short period of private practice, as an Assistant Counsel and then Deputy Counsel to Governor Kane. In 1989, she was appointed Director and Chief Administrative Law Judge at the New Jersey Office of Administrative Law. In 1998, she joined Governor Christine Todd Whitman as Commissioner of the Department of Banking and Insurance, served as Commissioner until her appointment in 2000 as an Associate Justice of the Supreme Court, becoming only the fourth woman to be appointed to the court. And in addition to that, she's one of the nicest people I've ever met. It's a pleasure to introduce Associate Justice Janie Levecchia.
Very much, Judge Serpentelli and judges of Ocean County. I apologize for turning my back during this presentation. I learned early on in my legal career never to do that. So please but good afternoon to you, to the county representatives, the legislators that are here today, and also all of the many honored guests in the audience. I bring best wishes on behalf of the Chief Justice and my fellow Associate Justices who could not be here, but asked me to represent all of them this proceeding today. It is a high honor to be able to be invited and participate in the grand event that's taking place as we speak. Today we celebrate what I think can only be described as a loving restoration of a courtroom that is of singular importance to the Ocean County community. The reopening of this historic courtroom has significance for several reasons. It symbolizes the good intergovernmental relations that exist between the judiciary and county leadership. The restoration of its elegant features also serves as a monument to the county's long-standing reverence for the dignity of the law. And consistent with our legal traditions generally, and particularly here in Ocean County, this room represents our commitment to doing all that we can to invite and encourage the public to witness the administration of justice. I'd like to focus on that last point just a little bit for a moment. In the context of tracing the origins of what's known as the modern criminal trial in Anglo-American justice, the United States Supreme Court, in a decision called Richmond Newspapers, Inc. versus Commonwealth of Virginia, noted that although trial procedures may have changed over time, one thing has remained constant, and that is that the trial has always been open to all who care to observe. Indeed, here in New Jersey, the openness of trials was recognized as part of the fundamental law of the colony. As far back as 1677, in a document entitled Concessions and Agreements of West New Jersey, it was provided, and I quote, that in all public courts of justice for trials of causes, civil or criminal, any person or persons, inhabitants of said province, may freely come into and attend the said courts, and hear and be present at all or any such trials as shall be there had or passed, that justice may not be done in a corner, nor in any covert manner. When Ocean County was formed in 1850, one of the first orders of business of the freeholders was to create a public courthouse. The construction was completed before the close of the next year. Now, we all know the history of this courtroom can be recounted by those far more knowledgeable than I, and I hope to hear more of that from the following speakers that come after me. But what is plainly evident is that the early leaders of Ocean County understood the importance of having an inviting open forum for the conducting of its judicial business. Stated differently, they understood the people's interest in justice. For as Daniel Webster said, justice is the great interest of man and woman on earth. People really do desire to see the search for truth and to see it in action. So thus, this courtroom was built. And through the years, it has continued to serve to entice the public to view the proceedings that are held by the fine Ocean County judges who have come before and who serve now. And now we're assured that this courtroom will continue to do so, and with style, with the same style and elegance that was envisioned for it when it first opened. The original Ocean County interest in encouraging public participation and involvement in judicial activities is still a hallmark of this vicinage. Indeed, is one of its most unique aspects. In many respects, this is a vicinage that understands the importance of staying true to its roots, as well as maintaining an openness to new innovations. Many of the innovations for which this vicinage is noted are consistent with the county's historical concern for citizen involvement and understanding of what transpires in its judicial system. This county is a leader in making advances in information technology. It's been in the forefront of testing new programs and developing reports to track the work of its courts. It's also been on the forefront of our efforts to implement systems for electronic filing and document management. All are designed to improve access to the courthouse and to make it overall a more user-friendly place for litigants and other interested parties. This vicinage never lost sight of staying in touch with the community that it serves. Its outreaching to the community is one of its finest features. This is the vicinage that thought to ask jurors whether they would be willing to serve on a committee after their service, whose purpose would be to reach out to others in the community and generate confidence in the judicial system, and to also generate interest in its citizens that they would be willing to serve as jurors when others were asked. It created among its employees a greeter program a volunteer program for these employees, where they go out of their way to make more pleasant a person's experience in the courthouse, even if only to assist a person having business in the courts with navigating its corridors. I commend this vicinage for being an example of a judicial system that understands the importance of being able to look forward and to accept innovation while continuing to revere the best that's in its history. Ocean County has always been a leader in progress, yet it remains a vicinage that is steeped in tradition and one that takes great pride in its standards and its quality. I am so pleased to be here today with the fine judges of Ocean County and the professional staff that make the whole judicial system work, as well as the county officials that are here today. All of us in tribute to the restoration of this room that is itself a tribute to the county's glorious past. And now the room will serve well and, importantly, functionally in the delivery of justice here in Ocean County well into the future. In the revival of this classic beauty, let us all appreciate the sense of passion for the rule of law which led to its creation by Ocean County's early leaders, and which led subsequent leaders, including its present one, as well as other members of this vicinage, to keep the spark of that flame burning brightly. The determined desire to revive this room to its former beauty will enable the bench and the bar for many years ahead to better feel and to better see to it that the cause of justice is being well served. In closing, let me say on behalf of the Chief Justice and my fellow justices, I wish to thank all those responsible for the restoration of this beautiful and treasured courtroom. I especially would like to thank the County Board of Freeholders for their financial support and other support for this restoration. And last but absolutely not least, to Judge Serpentelli, whose dedication to task has brought this room back to its previous charm and more. It is a stunning room, architecturally and historically of great importance. I'm proud to be among those celebrating its reopening today, and I want to thank all who were involved in putting together this program for inviting me to witness its official reopening. Thank you.
Thank you, Justice, for those very fine and kind remarks. You mentioned the greeter program. Some of you may not know that Ocean County Judiciary has the equivalent of Walmart's program, and I trust that many of you on the way in met, I think we had about a dozen people trying to get you to the right place, and that happens every day in this courthouse. And I hope as part of the reach out that we attempt each day to make to our citizens through those type of programs. And now let me introduce the second of our two freeholders to speak, another great long-serving public servant. In his capacity as Director of Law and Public Safety, he also works as liaison to the courts, and in that capacity, of course, I have a great deal of contact with him. He is always there for us. He's always been ready to help, and whenever he sees that what we may do will in any way further the interests and the benefits of the citizens of Ocean County, he's there to push for it. It's my great privilege to introduce Freeholder John B. Kelly.
Thank you, Your Honor. It is a pleasure and a privilege to be here today as we celebrate a very special occasion in Ocean County. You know, generally as the liaison to the courts, I'm the first freeholder to speak, but today we had another freeholder do that for three very good reasons. Number one, Freeholder Bartlett is in charge of the historic preservation in Ocean County. Number two, and very importantly, Freeholder Bartlett holds the purse strings as he is our finance chairman. But number three is he is the only member of the Board of Freeholders currently serving who was here in 1850. Ocean County is rich in history. From its role in the American Revolution to giant dirigibles once housed at Lakehurst, Our history is what shapes our future. Today, we take a look back and remember that this courtroom represents a simpler time in our history. This courtroom heralds our early beginnings when the Freeholder Board was just taking shape, when meeting attendees got here by horse, and when trials were held only once in a while. Over the years, however, this courtroom has come to symbolize an immense sense of community. Your friends, neighbors, or a family member may have become United States citizens during naturalization ceremonies once held within these walls. In this room, we have joined with our constitutional officers as they have taken the oath of office. We have watched attorneys be sworn in. We have celebrated all-day activities, and we have seen marriages take place here. Over the years, this room has held different yet special meaning for so many people. It has played an integral role in our history and continues to do so. With each swearing in, new attorneys, elected officials, judges, constitutional officers promise to serve the public to the best of their ability. In celebrating the reopening of this courtroom, we dedicate ourselves to serve the needs for which it stands. In getting here today, we as a board recognize and thank many people. Personally, I want to thank Judge Serpentelli, who saw this project through to the very last detail. And also to my colleague, Freeholder John Bartlett, who really was an integral part of the planning and the detail of this project. It is only when we realize the full scope of this undertaking can we appreciate the level of dedication this project represents. History has a way of adding perspective. Often there are lessons of the past that help us in planning our future. A place that knows its history is likely to be better able to serve and deal with tomorrow. Ocean County works hard to provide for its residents today, yet projects such as the restoration of this courtroom also allow our residents to learn more about where we came. So today, as we celebrate the grand reopening of this courtroom, we also celebrate our heritage. We learn from it and we move forward with it. I thank you very much and would like to call upon my colleague Freeholder Bartlett to return to the podium to make a special presentation.
That little story. I always wondered what held that.
Is this the bill?
I always wondered what held this ceiling up. Because it's a large span. And when this building was built in 1850 and 51, of course, it was wood construction. That's why I always wanted to sit near the sides in this room. But anyway, when the ceiling was torn out, the judge called and we came over to look at it, and he said, you know, I've always thought that ceiling sagged somewhat, and it certainly did. Those timbers had a distinct sag in them. And it really set the project back because the solution to that was to put steel in this. Of course, you know, that cost a little bit of money. So I wrote a note to the judge saying, Judge, have you ever been in a historic building where the ceiling didn't sag? Doesn't it really add something to the building to have that original sag ceiling? He worried for many years that ceiling may come down his bench. And he very politely wrote back and said, well, that may be, but I don't really think it will go with the decor. Well, given that, the freeholders replaced the old wood, these huge beams, with steel. And now we have no worry about the ceiling. I don't know about the walls holding up the steel, but the ceiling's fine. In any event, the removal of those timbers, Watson Farrell, former mayor in Beach Haven, came upon the idea of making a gavel and sounding block from those timbers. This block is from the original timbers holding up this roof. Some of the original square cut nails are still in it. It is a replica of the front of the courthouse. Interestingly enough, this piece of wood had the core of the center of the tree, and Watson could count out from those. And this tree began to grow in 1640. So it was about, what, about 100 and, no,
350 plus years, huh?
It's old.
Yeah.
But it was so, because it was original growth forest, the rings were very tight together. So, Judge, on behalf of Mayor Farrow, on behalf of the Board of Chosen Freeholders, we present you with this beautifully built gavel and sounding board with the assurance that you will never find the roof of this building.
That will be, of course, donated to our history case, which is in the jury room for two reasons. That's where it belongs. And for the second reason, for my 26 years on the bench, 26 years as of November 27th, it's time, I think, I had never used a gavel. I always say that a judge who needs to use a gavel has lost control of his or her courtroom. I continue to believe that that's the case, but this is a wonderful treasured gift, and so befitting, and I do thank you. Took the program a little bit out of order. Ed, you thought I was going to skip you. One of the other treasures of our county, and one of the great gifts to me as assignment judge, has been our association with the bar of this county. We have, for as long as I've been here, even before I was assignment judge, had the benefit of having a group of attorneys who have never said no and have come to the court's assistance whenever it needed it, and have tried to foster the professionalism that we all as judges want to see occur in our courts. And this year, the Bar Association has one of those very fine professionals as its president. It's my deep honor to introduce you Edward B. Castle.
I was starting to feel like a weak guest on the Tonight Show who gets bumped with Robin Williams at the end, but I have no problem with the order being changed. I appreciate Judge Serpentelli and the Board of Freeholders inviting the bar to participate in today's proceedings. This is certainly a beautiful courtroom. Added to the many faithfully restored details, I must thank Judge Serpentelli for setting aside a handsome wood display case, which is going to be dedicated to Bar Association history and memorabilia. That is much appreciated and will certainly be well utilized. As a litigator in New Jersey for almost 25 years, I've had occasion to see and work in some of the great courtrooms throughout the state, in Jersey City and in Newark and in Somerset County, for example. And this courtroom now stands with those historic places which will be visited and admired long after our practice days are past. The lawyers who practice in Ocean County and the clients we represent are the consumer beneficiaries of this terrific restoration. The late Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall said that mere access to the courthouse doors does not by itself assure a proper functioning of the adversary process. This is certainly true, but we might add that open access to a courtroom that is this elegant and this distinguished cannot help but assist, if not assure, the proper functioning of that process. Reason and justice and the rule of law deserve a nice place to live, and this is certainly such a place. The Ocean County Bar Association acknowledges and thanks Judge Serpentelli, the Board of Freeholders, the many planners and craftsmen who toiled here over many months, and last but certainly not least, our taxpayers for restoring this great room. We trust that the interests of justice in our community will be well served here for us and for those who follow. Thank you.
As the tradition goes, the judge always gets the opportunity to speak last. Today, we return to the past, and history again becomes our future. Indeed, history does have a way of repeating itself. It has been said we are as much a part of history as we are a part of the future. About 135 years ago, the Board of Freeholders was faced with a dilemma. The courthouse, which just 20 years earlier had been erected as Ocean County's first major public structure and thought to be a thing for the future, was apparently to become part of the scrap heap of history. The June 22nd, 1870 issue of the New Jersey Courier states, and I quote, "If there should happen to be a large gathering in the courthouse someday, and if this gathering should get to stamping pretty hard on the floor, and the whole thing should fall in, it is quite likely that someone would get hurt and perhaps killed." A bit of an understatement, I guess. The August 24th Courier reported on the Board of Freeholders meeting on April 18th. It said the freeholders had an exciting meeting at, quote, "our old rattletrap of a courthouse, which is tumbling down as fast as it can. In fact, on Saturday, a large quantity of plastering did fall." It actually looked like the centerpiece of Ocean County history might face the wrecker's ball, and that it would not take much to bring it down. The historical record does not reflect why the freeholders found themselves with this problem so soon after the structure was built. However, the sequence of events following the formation of the county and the construction of the building probably explains the mystery. As many of you know, if for no other reason than you've heard me say it a million times, Ocean County was formed when 6 towns split off from the county of Monmouth to set up their own county. And the reasons for the split are not really important for today's proceedings. It had something to do with taxes. So again, some things really don't change that much. In any event, the county was formally established on February 15th, 1850, and the founders set to work on the knotty task of deciding which town would have the honor of becoming the county seat and thus having the courthouse in its community. And after a 2-day fight and much arm twisting, the little village of Toms River won out by a single vote over the village of Lakehurst. Then the real headache started. The new county had no money. How could they construct a building to house all of the county offices and a space for the court? But the wise group came up with the idea of inducing someone to donate land for the building, and it worked out so well that Captain Joseph Coward gave a piece of his cornfield on a dirt road running between Meeting House Road and Shank Road, which we now call Washington Street, as well as 6,000 bricks to help get the courthouse started. The freeholders' frugality did not stop there. Once again, history doesn't change much. They appointed a committee to tour the state on horseback to find an exciting courthouse that they might replicate. Hudson County had built a structure just 5 years earlier, in 1845, which caught the fancy of the freeholders, and they managed to borrow, again without cost, the plans for that building. For that reason, our courthouse today, in its external appearance, looks almost identical to the original Hudson County courthouse. Regrettably, the Jersey City structure was taken down in 1910. With free land and virtually no architectural costs, well, the freeholders actually did advertise for an architect and offered to pay him $20 to draw the plans. The construction began. The inside of the courthouse reflected the plain and simple character of the village. The first floor housed all the county officers, the clerk, the surrogate, and such, and the second floor, this area, was simply a 40 by 46 multi-purpose room. with a 20-foot ceiling. There was no formal courtroom. This space was used for all county and local purposes. In addition to civic functions, it accommodated meetings of the Grange, Daughters of the American Revolution, square dancing, and the like. Indeed, many of you are no doubt sitting in a place where in the 1860s, the young men of Ocean County stood to receive their uniforms before being sent out to the Civil War battlefields, many of them never to return. Yes, this room was a central mustering point for the war effort. Only on rare occasions was it used as a court, as the judges back then rode the circuit on horseback, and trips to Tom's River were few and far between. However, as I mentioned, by 1870, it looked like the cornerstone of Ocean County's early history could be lost. The August 18th, 1870 edition of the Courier reported that Mr. Thomas Hooper, after whom we have Hooper Avenue, strenuously argued that the repairs had to be made to this court, quote, in order to save the structure from premature dissolution. The freeholders, not without dissent, by the way, decided to undertake the project. Yes, they did haggle over the scope of the project. The Courier mentions in the same article the sum desired to be raised for this purpose was $15,000. But a compromise was effected by which the Committee on Public Buildings was authorized to expend $10,000 on the house, which will save it. Therefore, the appropriations were set for the reparations of the courthouse with the intention of making it, quote, worthy of the name courthouse. The September 28, 1870 issue of the Courier provides a detailed account of the activities at the courthouse. It says, the repairs are going on quite briskly at the courthouse. The stairs have been taken out, and half-circular stairs to be substituted in their stead. Some of you may have climbed those half-circular stairs coming up here, which are placed at the main entrance. The courtroom will remain as it is. Curious, because they weren't talking about changing it. But the two jury cells, which are the rooms that were outside the courtroom, one of which now is a restored Victorian sitting room we ask you to visit when we're finished here. The two jury cells have been taken away, and two handsome, light, well-ventilated rooms are to be substituted in lieu thereof for the use of, quote, the gentlemen of the jury. Somewhere in this process, the history is incomplete because of missing documents. The freeholders apparently extended the scope of their project. Now included in the plans was the destruction of a portion of the north wall of the courthouse, which is this wall, which allowed for the construction of this apse behind me and the dome, which became popularly known as the Grecian Bend, named, we believe, after the shape of a popular bustle of that day. The room to my left, the robing room, and the room to my right, what was called the lawyer's retiring lounge, was not added until 20 years later in 1890. As the courtroom neared completion, it received rave reviews. The November 30th issue of the Courier states, the Grecian Bend at the courthouse comes on finally as it approaches completion. The Grecian Bend will soon become a popular institution, I think, when the courtroom becomes to be used again in January next. The December 14th issue of the Courier states that the building committee is pushing the courthouse right along. Bristol's Grecian Bend begins to look very cozy and becoming. The January 4, 1871 issue of the Courier reports, the courthouse is fast approaching completion, and we understand will be in order for the courts next week. I pointed out to Mr. Harding that things, again, don't change, because the courthouse didn't open for many months thereafter, once again, repeating history. Going on with the quote, "It is certainly a gem and one of the finest courthouses in the capital state. The Capitol Grecian Bend has been fashioned into a beautiful alcove," listen to this, judges, "where the judges can sit in majestical dignity." I haven't sat in majestical dignity for the 26 years I've been living. It continues, "Persons from the rural districts will hardly know the establishment, and few there would desire it back again to where it was a few months ago. Indeed, it is a thing of beauty." The March 29th issue of the New Jersey Courier notes, "Our courthouse is now nearly completed. From one of the most unsightly buildings we had among us, it has become one of the handsomest edifices in our state. The courtroom itself is a gem of beauty. The ceilings and the walls have been frescoed in a most workmanlike manner and look as cheerful and smiling as a reception hall. Bristol's Grecian Bend is a decided feature and adds largely to the comforts and conveniences of the judges, the bar, and the people attending. Fine carpets have been laid on the floors. New chairs and tables have been provided. The slips have been painted on the jury benches. And everything is in perfect keeping." And then it goes on to say, "In the presence of so much taste and beauty, one can hardly realize that he is in the stern temple of justice, where erring mortal is made to do right and punishment awarded to the guilty. Ocean County can safely brag of her rejuvenated courthouse." The courtroom remained in that condition until the evening of October 25th or the early morning of October 26th, the record's somewhat muddy, 1929, when, because of some unmentionable activities occurring in the basement of the courthouse, and if you want to know more about that, you speak to me at the reception afterwards, a fire occurred which raced up the north wall of the courthouse, came down through the skylight in the dome, and destroyed much of the room, including the original 13-foot black American walnut bench, which was found on the first floor in charred pieces. But vestiges of the fire, as Polly mentioned, were found everywhere during our restoration, in the floor, in the ceiling, in the roof, on the moldings. But fortunately, the courthouse was saved from the fire, but never restored to its original condition. Around 1854, the county got its first full-time judge, and a space had to be found for the jurist. It was decided that this Grecian Bend would be sealed. The dome would be covered. The door leading to the jury room would be eliminated. The wall would be put back, and the Grecian Bend would disappear. And that is the way I found it 21 years ago. I also discovered that age again was taking its toll despite the efforts of the freeholders to hold it together. Mechanical systems needed replacement. As John said, the ceiling was sagging. Indeed, the roof wasn't bare. Once again, 135 years later, the freeholders were called upon to make a tough decision. It takes courage, wisdom, and an abiding sense of history to spend money to restore when it might be easier just to knock it down and start all over again. Some have little tolerance for the expenditure of public funds for such purposes. But more was at stake here, and the group of the freeholders before you today, as well as deceased freeholder Jim Mancini, who must be looking down and watching this with pride today, recognize that to permit this building, and particularly this room, to be lost would be tantamount to taking the heart out of the body of Ocean County's history. It is to their credit, and it will be to their legacy, that they have not only preserved the structure, but that they have recaptured its historical roots for generations to come. John Gardner has said that history never looks like history when you're living. How many of us have visited or used, worked in this facility countless times without ever thinking what it meant to our past and what it represents to our future? To cherish what remains on earth and to foster its renewal is not only a noble cause, it is essential to a civilized culture. Cicero tells us that history is the witness that testifies to the passing of time. It illumines reality, vitalizes memory, provides guidance in daily life, and brings us tidings of antiquity. We face the future with the past. We remember and celebrate our roots, our beginnings, through the restoration of this facility to a time gone by. It has been said that history is who we are and why we are the way we are. Therefore, we dedicate this gem of Ocean County history to the future, to our successors, with the certainty that they will have the wisdom of respecting and preserving it as an integral part of Ocean County's heritage. Thank you. Am I told that there's someone else before Reverend Joy that wishes to address?
Yes.
Note was passed. Okay. The Historical Society.
Your Honor and Your Honors, I'm Alan Moore, President of the Ocean County Historical Society, and I can honestly say this is the first time I've enjoyed being summoned to the bench. I'm deeply honored to be here. I've asked Richie Reibel, our Vice President, and Barbara Revolta, our Chief Administrative Officer, to join me in this presentation for several reasons. First of all, I represent and I'm part of the Depression generation. As such, I have seen a lot of history, and indeed I have met people who have told me firsthand about happenings going as far back as the Civil War, and also the campaign of Woodrow Wilson in 1916. Richie, on the other hand, represents Generation X, who can only know history through people such as yourself, who so eloquently preserve history and culture. On behalf of the entire society, and by the way, Barbara Revolta, our senior professional staff person, joins me because we are a unit, a combined unit. And so on behalf of the professional staff, the board, the volunteers, the members, and in fact all the people of Ocean County, I'd like to present you this plaque to say thank you for the way you are preserving our culture and our history through this beautiful courtroom. And indeed, as Richie told me not too long ago, his first encounter with Ocean County history came when he was summoned for jury duty, and you gave a lecture which he never forgot. Your Honor, thank you for the privilege of being here, and we present this.
Before we get to, it's so wonderful to see our clergy anxious to bless the courtroom. and while you're at it, would you give me a little bit of that? Barbara was up here before she escaped. I wanted to acknowledge the fact that she has been working with us in restoring, in setting up the historic cases in the jury room, which I invite you all to take a look at as we go. They're not completed, and so you haven't seen her finest work, but she's got to be putting the labels on what you're seeing there and all of those sort of things. But Barbara, thank you. And talk about thank you. I started to think about thanking people for this journey. We started the hard work of actually destroying the courtroom and restoring it in March 2.5 years ago. But the work goes back far before then. We've been doing historical research for many, many years. Many of my poor law clerks, as I refer to my victims, took part in some of that historical research, going across the street or to the New Jersey Courier, to find the records of the New Jersey Courier, Freehold, and so forth, to help in making sure that what we did here was as close as we could to the accurate reproduction, keeping in mind that we have to make concessions to a functioning courtroom. For example, we have to have real lighting. They had gas lamps back then. We had potbelly stoves. And we thought about leaving them in. We found vents for them in the walls and those kind of things. But many of my clerks joined in that effort. And I'm not going to recognize a whole lot of people, but I have about 12 or 13 of them over there. And just to see what young people who know nothing about history but learned about it in this setting look like. Would you all stand? But back to the issue of thanking you. I decided I'm not going to thank anyone other than that recognition, other than to demonstrate to you how many people were involved in this. And this is a bit unfair because we've got some people standing in back who were involved. I'd like to ask everybody who took part in any way in the restoration of the courtroom to stand. And please don't be shy. Freeholders, you can do it as well. Come on, get up. Get up. Come on. Come on. And of course, there are many others who might, for one reason or another, not be with us today. Again, I encourage you, when we're done, the reception is going to be up in the multi-purpose room. I think they're probably ready for us, but I'm sure they wouldn't mind if we waited a minute or two while you mill around, or when you get some food. Please don't bring the food back here. I mean, it's not that I mind, but if I send in a bill for cleaning the carpets, we're going to... I want to mention to all attorneys here today, we're having an attorney appearance day tomorrow, so that any attorney who would like to is welcome to come to the courtroom and place their appearance on the record, make any comments they'd like about the courtroom, old or new, any remembrances they might have, so that they can say they appeared on the first official day of court of the new courtroom. That will be between 11 and 12:30 and between 2 and 3:30, and if you come a little earlier or later, of course, we're not going to return away. Some people asked if they could take pictures. I didn't see that many cameras going off. Please be our guest. And finally, once again, there is what I'm assured will be an elegant reception in the multi-purpose room for all of you to take part in. And now, appropriately to close, I would like to introduce a frequent visitor to our court, in each time an inspiring blessing of the Reverend David Joint of the Presbyterian Church of Townsend.
My little experience in courts, I'm sure this won't be the last time that prayer takes place here by judges, defendants, and by lawyers. But it's appropriate that we acknowledge the one who is the source of our personal freedoms and our public order, and indeed our ultimate judge. Let us pray. Gracious God, we thank you for all those who have worked to restore this room, and we pray that this will not simply be a restored room, but a room of restoration, where the wounded will be made whole and the broken will be healed. We thank you for the constitutional framework that protects our liberties and helps us settle our differences, for the law that relieves us of the tyranny of the present tense and embodies the wisdom of the past. We thank you for jurists who in previous generations found a way on this uneven terrain of human history to render precedents that reflect to a certain measure your perfect justice. And on behalf of the citizens of this great county, we ask your special blessing on all the judges, the officers of the court, the clerks, the lawyers, everyone who will seek the truth in this place. We pray boldly now that in 100 years, on the centenary of this rededication, people not yet born will celebrate a century where righteousness flows down and justice has rolled on like a mighty stream in this place. In your great name, amen.
And now I think I'll break a tradition and say the court is in recess.
Another survivor.
For the purpose of our video, and this may be taken out of the video, but Ms. Collins represents perhaps it's 50-plus lawyers who appear here today to place their appearance on the record on the first business day of the court and to talk a little bit about either what they remember of the old court or what they think of the new court or whatever. So, counsel, if you'd like to place your appearance.
If Your Honor, please, Henry F. Collins, appearing to admire what Your Honor has accomplished here. I was here for Mr. Liston's comments, and sort of taking off on that, I remember a short story I read as a high school boy referring to the majesty of the law. And it was a somewhat humorous short story about the way the Irish treat the law, and I am half Irish. But I always think of the phrase, the majesty of the law, and I think of even the old courtroom the way it was. Did humble one and made one feel like you were part of something important. and restoring this courtroom to what it was before my time, before Your Honor's time, just helps, I think, continue that tradition. And I think we as lawyers always have to remember, and I wish the public would understand, we are part of a noble tradition, and this courtroom inspires that. On a less serious level, I would respectfully remind Your Honor of a trial I had before this court in this room some years ago. And the defendant, I was representing the plaintiff, the defendant was an older gentleman whose lawyer was attempting to prove to the jury that the older man still had all his faculties about him. And he asked the gentleman to look at the clock on the wall over the doors. And the gentleman did, in fact, say, yes, I can see the clock. And he was asked what time it was, and he said, it's 20 minutes to 2. I immediately stood and asked Your Honor to state for the record the actual time, and it was actually 2 o'clock. I note that in the new incarnation of this room, the clock isn't there, and I wonder if there was a connection.
Actually, that clock was electrified. I had it electrified in the school clock. And we failed to provide for an outlet for the electrified clock. Now I think we have to de-electrify it, if there is such a word, and put it back because we still have the original clock. But yes, I do remember.
I was just wondering if, consistent with the original courtroom, are these the original 1850 microphones?
No, they're not. And that's why you see no microphones up here. They're hidden. But we wanted to be sure we put counsel up on the record today. The appellate division tells me they won't use microphones for the podium. So I guess they think lawyers will be heard.
Well, one of our, certainly in our profession, we do project.
Yeah. I guess their reasoning is that the people behind the rail have no need to hear the oral argument. But I was concerned today that people who were here, if there was any noise of people wandering through the courtroom, that each attorney would be heard. So that's why we put that there. As you can see, we're set up to have oral appellate division argument here, and they will be meeting here on a regular basis.
Your Honor, for myself and the bar, thank you, and congratulations on what we've done here.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Just in time to place your appearance on the record. Come right around. Now this is an old conjurer guy.
I've been here a long time, Your Honor.
By the way, did Henry Collins sign the vote? Is his name right there?
I can't read. I can't read that last signature.
We'll catch him as he comes out of the jury room.
Somebody named, looks like Allison or Colosi. I'm not sure.
You think that could be Collins?
Yes.
Yeah. Hold on just a second. Let me make sure that he did.
You did sign? Yes, he did, Your Honor.
He did? Okay, good. Good. So, let's have your appearance for the record, Mr. Cargan.
Thank you, Your Honor. Edmund J. Corrigan of the firm of Herring, Gannon, and McKenna, appearing for the first time in your beautiful renovated courtroom.
And on the first day of business, so that you will be part of the history of the court as part of that book and the record we're keeping.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Good. I'm sure you must have a few remembrances of the courtroom.
I actually do, Your Honor.
Well, go ahead.
When I was a boy going to St. Joseph's grade school down Hooper Avenue, at the end of the school day, about 2:30, I had a friend named Richie Clark, and we used to come here and watch the trials in the late afternoon. And there were 2 courtrooms. There was courtroom 1 and courtroom 2. Judge Larrapik was in one, and Judge Ewart was in the other. And so you had a choice of 2 judges.
Now, when would that be?
Late 50s, 58, 59, something like that. Early 60, maybe.
Okay, yeah. Because I have no recollection of Judge Ewart, and so he must have been gone when I came in 63, 64. I think he probably had left bench. We have his portrait outside of it. And I've been struggling to remember whether Judge Addison was on shortly after that, or what followed.
And I'm not really sure. I know it had to be the late 50s or early 1960 because I graduated grade school in June of 60. And it was while I was in 7th or 8th grade, so it was one of those years.
What do you remember about Judge Larrabee? And don't worry, the record will be sealed.
I don't really have any strong recollections aside from going to court and either watching one or the other judge, depending on who was busy and who had something interesting.
So you remember courtroom 2 as well?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, which now, for the record, no longer exists either. But that is not even courtroom now, so that's a kind of multi-purpose room. But many of the chairs in courtroom 2 were the same as the chairs in courtroom 1 during that period. All of which, of course, have been removed. And so the chairs in this courtroom were sold, 2 for $10. And they're now being sold in antique stores for $300 a pop. And that's something, so some foresighted investor could have made some money. But of course, you appeared here too, many times.
Yes, sir.
As well. And probably not too soon in the future, or not too far in the future, will be appearing again.
I would hope so, Your Honor.
Yes, good, good. But not with regard to the Point Pleasant case, please.
Oh, I know. I may be contacting you about that. I have a feeling we may need one more short meeting, but I still think we can finish it.
Good, that'd be great. That'd be great. Well, I'm so glad you came down and put your things.
Thank you, Your Honor. I was afraid I was going to miss it, but I finally had a few minutes, so I kind of came in.
No, we're hanging out, and the case is a couple of people that are a little late. So thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend.
You too.
And I'll take your coat.
Thank you.
Well, that makes it 51. It's not a number, makes it. It's not a number, makes it 51.
51. So we're getting to 52, is that it?
Yes.
All right. Kelly?
Just to put my appearance on the record on the grand reopening. 51, I think, is actually a better number because you won't have a tied vote then in the event you ever have to make a decision with the 51 people who came here today. I remember the first time I was in courtroom 1 was in 1981. The summer of 1981, at that point, I had just finished my second year of law school. I was working for the Starkey Kelly firm as a law clerk. Charlie Starkey had given me the task that summer of working on the Jackson landfill insurance coverage litigation.
The Ledler case.
Yeah, the Ledler case, and that portion of it dealing with the coverage. Charlie represented Hartford Insurance Company, and I did all the work on, well, I can't say I did all the work. Charlie may read this someday. But I did a lot of the work on the briefs, summary judgment motions that were heard before Judge Havey one afternoon back in the summer of 1981. And I came down here with Charlie and a lot of other lawyers here. Frank Crayhay at that time was representing one of the litigants after having stepped down from the appellate bench. I think it was Francis Wolf from Red Bank was here for another carrier. And Judge Havey was presiding. And thereafter, I guess, made appearances here mainly before Your Honor. I can't think of any other appearances here before Judge Havey or any other judge. Unfortunately, the one jury trial I had before Your Honor was not in this courtroom. It was over in then courtroom 2, Judge Addison's old courtroom, as I'll call it. I don't know if Your Honor remembers. That was an older lady who rolled out of bed at Point Pleasant Hospital twice in one night.
Right.
And I had Dr. Doulette as my expert witness. That was a one-day trial.
I do remember that, yes. The courtroom that I never liked doing jury trials in, but and now it's gone.
Right. And the ambiance there was certainly not like
two with the same size may not be appropriate.
Exactly, sort of oxymoronic. But it looks wonderful, and I hope that I played some small part in helping along crane construction and tri-form millwork to get us where we are today.
Yes, you certainly did, and you should indicate that Mr. Mendon and his firm, as representatives of the county, did get involved at the various phases of our struggle, and we're very helpful in getting us through. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Judge. Have a nice weekend, all.
Thank you.
So,
Children.
they're fine.
Good, that's good.
You're welcome to take a look if you want, the roving room, the jury room, and out on...
So they're outside.
Huh?
They're beautiful. All in five buildings. Do you think the ghosts outside?
Well, they're supposed to come back on Wednesday to do the inside. Can you see them pulling up these blinds?
Well, they did in the hallway, and then they didn't put it all the way down.
I was about to tell you, one of them wasn't all the way
And you
down.
know what, I looked at it and I said, I'm not trying to say Tomorrow's another day.
Yeah, well, Monday.
How are you?
Come on in. Come on in.
Judge, one question.
Yes.
Between Judge Hayden and yourself, was there anybody else?
Well, you know, I've been thinking about that. I think there was sort of periodic sessions where Judge used it, but when I came back in, because I left it and went and sat across in 125,
Mr. Mattei, I want to congratulate you.
well, thank you.
on your courtroom.
Put your appearance on the record.
I will, thank you, Judge. For the record, Kathleen Sy from the Public Defender's Office. Just want to congratulate you on a beautiful courtroom and say hello.
Thank you. Well, thank you for coming in. Have you ever appeared here before?
Yeah, Judge. I clerked here years ago.
How long?
I've never, 1989.
89 for a
And
rotation.
Rotation, Judge Giovanni, and Judge Pappy, Judge Courtney, and that's not good.
Come on, it was only 1989.
I know. Judge Gossett for 2 weeks, and I miss him one. Can't remember.
Let's see. Judge Pepe in what? In
Judge Basinski. It's Judge Basinski's first law firm.
okay.
Judge
There you go.
Basinski, sorry about that, I just saw Judge Basinski.
There you go.
Yes. Many years ago.
Yeah.
Lisa Buto was your law clerk back then.
I'm sorry?
Lisa Buto was your law clerk that year.
Yeah. Oh, I see. Yes,
We're good
yes.
friends.
She's now in Georgia.
Yes, she is. 2
And
kids.
2 children.
Right.
And very much would like to come back to New Jersey, but her husband is chiropractic
I know.
practice.
I introduced them.
Oh, did you?
We were all on vacation down in the Outer Banks of North Carolina.
No kidding.
And that's when they fell in love.
And her
Probably saying too much for her.
and her mother and dad missed her so much and their grandchildren that they moved down to Georgia
Florida.
to be with them.
Originally Florida. Maybe they moved since then. You're probably right, Judge.
Okay.
Originally
maybe-
Florida, but maybe they moved.
well, maybe
even
they
closer.
changed their plans. I mean, I heard they were going to move. I thought it was to Georgia. So
They probably did.
no. But I know they're down that away.
Yeah.
And you know, glad to be with the grandchildren. But we've had Lisa here a couple times since then.
Yeah, I know.
Unfortunately, it wasn't with us yesterday. We had 12 of my surrogate children yesterday, but not Lisa.
Bet you wish you could have been in with us.
Oh yeah, yes, yeah. She frequently we correspond by email, and she frequently say, you know, I hate missing some of the events at the courthouse. But, you know, that life takes people in different directions. It's so great to have you.
Nice coming by. Thank you very much, Judge.
Thank you.
See you. Goodbye.
Could you do me a favor and just spell your last name?
Sure. Syak, C-I-A-K.
C-Y-A.
C-I.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Judge, I think we had just about our whole office come over.
Yes, I think they did.
Yes.